when you lose someone, you want memories of them. You want to carry on some of the things that they did as a way of remembering them. And because in the 70s, the way people dealt with loss was to never talk about who died. It was quite different than it is right now. We now know how important it is to keep those memories alive and to talk about the person who died or the people who died. That didn't happen then. So I had to have my own little ways of remembering my mother. And I would never go to bed at night, no matter what was going on, until I was able to use some Ajax and shine up that sink, because then I felt like my mother was close by and that she would be proud of me and that she knew that the things she taught me, that I was following in her footsteps.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. It's the Author Podcast. We're going to repair some rainbows today, and I'm excited about this. Lynda's here with me, and my wife and I have both read this book, A True Story of Family, Tragedy, and Choices. Lynda Fishman is my guest. This book is, like, I would tell you, like a must purchase, must have, must read for sure. I had to wrestle it out of my wife's hands just to do the interview today because it's still warm, I'm sure, from her reading it. So it's a great book, and I'm excited to have Lynda on the show today. We're going to talk about it. And Lynda, thank you so much for making time to be here with us. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you so much, Dave. I'm so happy to be here.
This is great. This is really great. And this is why I love this podcast is not only do I get to meet great people, I get to read amazing stories and connect with people that I truly admire. So again, thank you so much for doing this and making time for us. This is, like I said, my wife and I had to wrestle between each other for this book. And I wouldn't say I let my wife win this match, but she definitely dominated because this was in her hands walking around the house all the time. So again, beautiful book, great story. Lynda, let's start here. Where are you in this great big world of ours?
I'm in Toronto.
There you go, right?
Canada.
Ontario, Canada, where I am as well. Great, amazing. Yes. My wife has connections in Oakville area. And a bunch of other stuff kind of came up through reading the book as well. So she's like, she knew about places that were mentioned in the book and all kinds of interesting things. So there's a lot of parallels from her life and that time frame as well. So exciting. Let's start here, Lynda. We have authors who listen to the show, and I always like to honor them before we get into the book. I want to encourage an author that's early days in writing their story. Maybe it's a personal story like yours, or maybe it's a fictional story, but they're new to writing. So if you hit play on a podcast or something like a podcast when you first started writing this book, what do you think now looking back would have been helpful to hear from an author who is further down the road that might have helped you when you were writing your book?
I think the most helpful feedback I heard was, you can do this and you should do this because you have such an important story to share. What I chose not to listen to were the negative, disillusioning comments, which I'm sorry to say dominated most of the feedback that I received. Most people, for some reason, didn't think that writing a book was something that would end up being successful or something that I could actually complete. And I chose to disregard that negative feedback and focus on the people who were encouraging and motivating. And most of it just came from within. I felt very compelled to tell this story. I felt that it was an important story and one that many people could relate to. And I just plowed ahead. And I really do believe that if you have an important story to share, that you should continue to write and focus on all the positive reasons for writing that story and how much meaning you could provide for other people.
Had you written anything else before writing this book? Really?
Nope. It was my first. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, you reading this, I wouldn't anticipate that answer. I would have thought you had written many times before this because of how this book is just laid out and the story and how it's written and how it brings you in as a reader. I almost don't believe you, Lynda. It seems like you've written a lot, but it's a powerful book, and the way you put it together is just spectacular. So congratulations on what a great first book. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Wow.
You know what, Dave? I think I wrote this book in my head over and over and over again.
Right.
And I also used a lot of the diaries that I had written as a young teenager to help jog my memory. I had scrapbooks, I had diaries. I did have some cheat notes that I could refer to so that I could remember as accurately as possible what the story was all about, because I wrote this book 40 years after the tragedy that I went through.
40 years after. Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been a journey as an author, as a writer, to go through those mementos, those memories, those clippings, those written thoughts in the moment, and reread and transport yourself back to that time. Like, that must have been a very interesting process for you as well.
Absolutely. Interesting, cathartic, painful, so many adjectives I could use to describe what that experience was like. But most of all, it was very important for me to put myself back to the time when I was 13 years old and when my mother and two younger sisters were killed in an Air Canada plane crash. And that is a tragic, horrific situation that I never thought I could possibly live through and create a meaningful life after such devastating loss. So I really had to put myself right back 4 decades to relive that pain that I had kept so carefully hidden for so long, and really never processed my grief, really never faced all that heartache.
So this happened for you when you were like 13, is that right?
13.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So at 13, can you I'd like to kind of share a little bit of what the family dynamic was like before all of this happened. Happy family, everybody's good, everything's great. Like, can you kind of give us a sense of what home life was like for you growing up?
You know, I love that you asked that question, because I truly believe that the first 13 years of my life set the stage for me to have to deal with a tragic loss of my entire world.
Right.
My mother, I was 13. My mother was 39. My sisters were 8 and 11. And so I was the oldest. And all of a sudden I was faced with the most unbelievably tragic situation. They were killed in a plane crash, which is, almost unheard of. And I do believe those first 13 years helped me make the choices that I made in order to move forward. So, I love the name of your podcast, because I do believe that every chapter builds on each chapter of your life.
Right.
None of them just exist on their own.
Yeah.
And so I took those first 13 years, those chapters of my life, and made choices moving forward after my whole world fell apart.
So talk a little bit more about your relationship with your mother. Being the oldest, you had the most time with your mother. Usually the oldest does, right? Compared to your siblings. So your relationship with your mom, like, what kind of things stand out to you from your memory, from going back and writing the book? Anything kind of surprise and delight you and as you think back on her?
Well, again, very interesting question. So my first 13 years were filled with a very happy home life. We weren't wealthy. We didn't go on fancy vacations, but we felt incredibly rich and secure as a family, and very close with our extended family and friends. And our home was just a busy, active, noisy place. My relationship with my mother was incredibly positive. I had just turned 13 when she died. I wasn't yet at that stage where we were bickering and having typical teenage mother-daughter conflict. I wasn't there yet. So we had this beautiful relationship. She was just my idol. Mm-hmm. And the lessons she taught me as a giving, caring person were really helpful in me making choices about how to move forward, because for me, helping others is something that was integrated into my whole life before the plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helped me make choices about what to do for my career. So I ended up becoming a therapist and a social worker and helping people for decades deal with grief and loss and any kinds of changes in their life. So I do believe that the first 13 years taught me about what values were important and helped me make the choices moving forward. And I'm so grateful that I had those first 13 years so that I could draw on those values and on the dreams that I never gave up. The dreams about being joyful again, finding that happy feeling, that secure feeling that family has to be the number one. It was.
So what's one of those lessons that stick out for you from your mom that you still see in your life today?
That every day of your life should be filled with some meaning. And that truthfully, gratitude is the most important umbrella for everything in your life. And that if you can somehow look for ways to be grateful in your life, your choices will then follow under that umbrella of gratitude. And those chapters in your life, no matter whether or not they are blessed with wonderful things or challenges and losses, if you can find some gratitude, even in the darkest times, you will, I believe, be able to move forward. And that's what I did. I hung on to those lessons as I tried to plow my way through the darkness at 13, really alone. My father was so devastated and shattered after losing his wife and 2 children that he couldn't make the same choices I was making. For whatever reason, he had very different chapters leading up to this tragedy.
Yeah.
And we made different choices. We went through the same tragedy, but we were in very separate boats, very separate.
So for listeners, they're going to read the book and read the story, but basically there was a family function that everyone was traveling to, and you went out early to help set up, and your mother and your siblings were coming later. That's kind of the situation that was happening. So that's why you weren't with them for the trip. Is that correct?
Right. We were living in Montreal at the time, and we did have a family function in California. So I went with my maternal grandparents the week before because I was one of those 13-year-olds who loved organizing and cleaning. And I really wanted to get the apartment that we were going to live in for that month in California all set up so that when my mother and sisters arrived, everything would be all set up for them. And then my dad was scheduled to come the week later. So the plane crashed when my mother and sisters were on their way to California from Montreal with a stopover in Toronto. And the cause of the plane crash was pilot error, and all 109 people on board died. We were in California at the time, and because of the time difference, we got a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning, California time, which was 8 o'clock Montreal time, from my father, woke us all up, my aunt, uncle, cousins, my grandparents, to say the plane had crashed and they didn't think there were any survivors. So as a 13-year-old, hearing all the screaming and yelling and I mean, it was indescribable what went on in that apartment, obviously. I thought it was just a really terrible nightmare. Like, it was really hard to even process the reality of it all. I was so young and woken up. So it took a while for the reality to set in. We flew back to Montreal immediately. We were barraged by big cameras and reporters sticking microphones and flashing lights in our faces. And I kind of, as a 13-year-old, thinking this was just a really bad nightmare, I kind of found the whole thing quite sensational until the reality hit me, until we actually saw my father at the airport in Montreal to greet us. And it started to hit me that maybe this wasn't just a nightmare, this was reality. Yeah. And then as the days went on, all of the horrific realities that we were faced with made this more and more real. But again, nobody provided any help or support back then. You were on your own.
Okay.
in 1970.
Yeah.
So the way I dealt with it, which was different than my father, but the way I dealt with it was I just repressed all of the grief and loss, kept myself unbelievably distracted and busy. And I did that for decades while I created my own family and got married and had children. And I mean, I've been with my husband for over 50 years. We met when we were 17 years old and we created this incredible life together.
Wow.
So when people meet us, they're shocked. They're shocked when they hear my story. And my husband also had some horrific tragedy as a child. So people meet us and they cannot believe our story.
Wow. For you as a parent then, how do you bridge this topic with your own kids? Like, when is it appropriate to have a family? Your kids understand their history and kind of your history. Like, when is it okay to have that conversation as a parent? I have no idea how to even bring that up to my children about what's gone on in my past in that case.
Well, that's a very complicated situation to deal with because for me as a young mother and for my husband as well, I would say that we both constantly felt cheated out of parents and grandparents for our children.
Right.
Because we looked around and everywhere we looked, we saw grandparents. And we didn't have that for our children. My father wasn't able to be a father to me anymore after the tragedy, and he certainly wasn't able to be a grandfather. And so, and my husband had no parents. He was orphaned at 17. So we were faced with that reality very early on, and our children knew they didn't have grandparents. Like, that was just the way they grew up. We had a lot of extended family, aunts and uncles and cousins and people who were very important in our lives, but our children knew and asked questions quite early on about why they didn't have grandparents. And we dealt with it very honestly and openly. And it was not let's sit down and have a conversation. We answered their questions as they came up. And as a trained therapist, I drew on some of my professional training to make sure that I addressed this as best I could. But even as a therapist, I had my own wounds. I had my own issues in facing or not facing all of this. So, like I said, it was complicated, and we did the best that we could to make sure we let our kids know the honest answers to why they didn't have grandparents, but we also tried to compensate for their lack of grandparents.
Yeah. We talked about a little bit about your mother. What about your siblings too, your relationship with them? Being the oldest in the family, as one of the kids, like, you saw them grow up as your siblings, your relationship with them as well. Like, that's another whole element of this story that's unimaginable, that you can lose because that's your family, right? That's a big chunk of your family, right? So your relationship with them, your memories as you wrote the book, what kind of came up for you when you thought of those two as well?
Well, my sister Carla was 16 months younger than me. Wow. So we were only a grade apart, and we did so much together. And because our family was so involved with each other and with our extended family, and family was number one, I can't even tell you how devastated I was to lose my two little sisters. I mean, Wendy, the younger one, who was 8 when she died, was our little toy. So Carla and I spent so much time playing with her because she was just our little toy. And I think people really underestimate the impact that it has on people when they lose a sibling, let alone two siblings.
Yeah.
And I have learned through the years how devastating it was to lose not only a mother, but to also lose my two sisters, because I felt so incredibly alone after such a busy household and having two younger siblings and doing so much together.
I can't imagine at 13 being thrust into a world of grief without the tools, without the experience, without seeing it from an adult perspective. As adults, we have a few more tools in our toolbox than someone at 13 kind of navigating life. And then just the circumstance around losing your mom and your siblings. Like, that's nothing you can prepare for. So as a 13-year-old, did you have anybody in your corner to help you? Like you said, you kind of went inward yourself personally, but was there anyone in your corner that was there to help you through this?
Well, my maternal grandparents did the best that they could. They were obviously so devastated, losing a daughter and two granddaughters, but they were as supportive and involved with my life as you could possibly imagine. And I was extremely close with them. And I would say the most valuable thing for me was to just stay busy and focused. So I spent a lot of time volunteering at hospitals where I could somehow feel lucky that I was healthy. Like I said earlier, I tried to find every reason in the world to feel grateful. And volunteering in a hospital on a children's floor back in the early 70s, when parents were only allowed to visit during visiting hours, gave me a lot of opportunity to feel really grateful that I wasn't hooked up to IVs and bald and dealing with all these medical issues. So I did that. I, put my heart and soul into my schoolwork and being on as many fundraising committees and school committees that I could possibly be on, and spending a lot of time with my grandparents and extended family, which was very important to me. And, I think I held on to my dreams so tightly and really, really wanted to feel that joy again, feel that security that I had felt in the first 13 years. And as soon as I met my husband at 17, we were both equally determined to create a very meaningful, joyful life. And because he had come from such a tragic background, and I did as well, we really understood each other very well, but not in a pity party way, in a really motivated way and a determined way to move forward. And we both have very positive attitudes, despite or maybe in spite of what we had been through. And so we were really very determined that we were going to lead meaningful lives and create joyful lives. And we did. And Repairing Rainbows is not a depressing book. I think, now you could agree.
Right. Oh, no. Yeah.
Even though it's, our tragic stories, both of our stories, it's all the life lessons that we learned in those 4 decades about how to move forward when you feel like you are in such a dark place that there is no way to move forward.
Right.
And that's why the book has done so well, and why so many readers tell me what you said at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
Because you can identify and relate to so much of the story. You don't have to go through a horrific tragedy to relate to the story, because loss is loss.
Yeah.
And anytime you're dealing with loss, you're dealing with very similar emotions. And what I tried to do is take those experiences and use some of my real life examples so that people could use the book as a guide for moving forward after loss.
All right. So for the reader, Lynda, listening, the underlying hope, you've kind of expanded on that a little bit, but just a little bit more for the reader, speaking to them directly. As you read Repairing Rainbows, your hope, the underlying message that you want this book to resonate with the reader, what is that?
The strongest message is we have choices. And no matter what we're faced with in life, we have choices. We can become bitter or we can become better. We can allow the loss to define us, or we can allow it to refine us. And I know those sound like cliches, but they're not, because I put them into action in real life. And because I have credibility. I went through the most horrific tragedy, and I'm here to say that I still feel incredibly blessed and lucky. Obviously not because of the tragedy, but because of the choices that I made to rebuild my life after losing everything as a 13-year-old with no community support, not even support from the school system, like nothing. I was literally on an island alone, and I had to make choices. And I really want readers to know that life is full of unexpected losses. We all know that. Anyone who's gone through a loss will agree. Didn't see that coming. diagnosis or loss of a relationship or certainly of a death.
Yeah.
And we do get to choose how to move forward, and we can move forward. And some people just don't believe that. Or people are so guilt-ridden moving forward and finding joy again after going through something tragic. And those are the things that stop you.
Now, I mentioned my wife loves this book and she gave me notes. It's like she's at work and I'm recording this while she's at work. So I have notes. And if I don't do this, Lynda, I'm going to get in trouble. So the one thing she talked about in chapter 9 was, and that's the first part around silence, was the funeral part. And there's a thing called Shiva. Is that right? Is that I pronounce it right? Shiva. Right. Shiva. So in Shiva, and we've seen this in movies actually before, and we didn't understand what happens around this. She found this fascinating because that's not our background, and we're learning through you and through your book. Can you talk a little bit more about what happens in that part? Because for my wife, Jen, she just got stuck here for a second. She was just like, I got to know more about this. What is kind of the idea behind this during the funeral process for the family? And like, how does this play out? Can you explain that a little bit more?
So in the Jewish religion, right after the funeral, everybody goes back to the home where the person who died or the people who died lived. And for approximately a week, it's like an open house. And people come to pay their respects and to talk about the deceased person or people. So for me, that week, especially because of the circumstances around identifying bodies or body parts after a plane crash, it's not your usual funeral of a full body and then, a week of Shiva. It is, for us, they first identified what they said were parts of my youngest sister, Wendy's body. So at 13, all I heard was, and I only heard this by eavesdropping on conversations that the adults were having, that they had identified something that told them it was part of Wendy's body. And so we could now have a funeral. And we had a funeral for her. They hadn't yet identified my mother or my sister, Carla. So we had a funeral for her, and then everybody spends time at the house. And during that 1 week, they then identified my mother and Carla's body or body parts. So the funerals happened and the Shiva period began again. So for approximately 10 days, we had an open house in July, no air conditioning, very, very small house in Montreal. The police were directing traffic. That's how many people were coming to the house every single day, all day. And as a 13-year-old, I was so overwhelmed and so sick and tired of having all of these people in our home without my mother there to kind of help me through this time. The most important person in my world wasn't there. Yeah. And I literally locked myself in the bathroom for almost the entire time with our family cat and just stayed in there as much as I could to hide from the people. And the other thing that I really want to emphasize is, and everybody who's gone through any loss, no matter what your religion, I think everybody will agree with this, is that when you go through the death of a loved one, people start to come out of the woodwork. Oh, I knew them and I was friends with them or I was related to them. It's almost like they want to mark their territory with the person who died, and which is lovely and supportive. And I know it's coming from a really good place. But for me, I didn't know so many of these people who were showing up at our home claiming to have been so close with either my mother or sisters or some of my relatives who they were coming to visit. And it just felt like such an intrusion, such an invasion of our privacy and our lives. And and also the other thing that people do is they like to one-up the stories. They like to let you know that they can understand how you're feeling because they too have gone through a loss. And the worst thing you can do when someone is now faced with a brand new loss and grieving so painfully is to tell them your story about your loss and to try to make it seem like you really understand because you too have gone through a loss. I don't care about your loss right now. Right now, I'm the one in pain. So we don't need to talk about you or make this about you. And I know it comes from a good place and people are doing it because they think it's going to give them the credibility for really understanding your pain. But it's an awful thing to say. And it's also an awful thing to say, at least. And what I heard a lot in those 10 days was, well, at least you weren't on the plane, or at least they all went together, or at least it happened fast. There is no at least. When you're suffering a horrible loss, the worst thing anyone can say to you is at least. There is no ending to that at least that feels good or comforting.
No. So the 13-year-old Lynda locked in the bathroom with the cat, what did she need in that period of time with all those strangers in your house doing all this? What did Lynda need in that moment?
Well, I needed my mother.
Yeah.
What I thought I needed was for this whole thing to end so everyone would get out of my house.
Yeah.
However, when that happened and the Shiva ended and everybody did leave, the silence was deafening.
There it is.
Then the reality of my house went from this happy, busy, nonstop doors opening, closing, slamming, music playing, TVs blaring to silence. That was deafening. And that's when my father and I barely spent any time at home. We stayed away from that house because it was impossible to be there and feel good about it. I couldn't even sit at the kitchen table by myself. It just everything felt wrong.
So this book, Lynda, like we really focus on the story, and I'm glad we can. And thank you for being so open to talk about this, because the book obviously will take us through the story as well, and it's a very powerful story. I want to focus on the other side of this, because you help people, you serve people in a very unique way. Do you think that your personal story gives you more than compassion, gives you empathy with people that you deal with in a unique way, because you've walked some pretty lonely paths by yourself, that now you, as somebody in your role now, can help people in a unique way? Do you find that kind of coming up in your day-to-day with the people you serve?
I would say that what the book has done and what my choices throughout my life have done, I believe, is absolutely given me a whole different lens to see life. I see life through a very grateful lens. I see it through a lens of we have choices and we make choices. So what choices are we going to make so that we can live a happy, meaningful, joyful life? And absolutely, I try to look at people, and I guess the most important thing I see when I look at people, no matter where I am, is that we never know what skeletons people have in their closet. We never know what they've had to deal with, what they're dealing with right now. And so I try so hard to be as compassionate as I can be, knowing that I did a very good job of hiding my skeletons for decades. And a lot of people do a really good job of hiding their grief and their loss and anything that they're struggling with. And, any kind of mental illness is often well hidden. And sometimes it's not. But either way, taking a more compassionate, empathetic approach when dealing with anybody, for me, has been very important. And we get to change our thoughts as well. And I really find it important for people to know that, we choose our thoughts, and we get to choose thoughts that are positive and helpful and productive, or we get to choose thoughts that are going to be damaging and destroy any chance of joy in our life. Mm-hmm. So, all of the choices that we make all the time, I think that self-awareness and really looking at how we are moving forward with our chapters in our lives is really important.
And what resonated for myself and my wife, Jan, was just the whole framing of choosing life. Like that was a choice for you to choose that. In a very dark story with, that's what you chose. You went down that path, and again, those are big adult decisions that to make even at 13 and up in, in your teenage years to live through this. And that was your choice. Right. And I'm just like, wow, it's powerful. Right. So I want to encourage that person listening who's struggling, right, with their story and maybe some things that have happened in their past. I think this book is really going to help you to frame for yourself the choices that you make, right, that you've talked about now and choosing life. I think that's an underlying current that I picked up on as well.
What I've heard from readers over and over and over again, and there's over 10,000 copies out there that...
wow, it's amazing.
That I know of anyways. Yeah. He knows how many other...
10,001. Yes.
Yeah. You've shared the book. Like people have told me they've passed the book around to so many different people, and I've really been so grateful to get the kind of feedback that I have gotten since the book came out in 2010. And what people have told me over and over again is that they've kept it at their bedside and they've referred to it over and over again through the years, because there are parts of the book that they felt that spoke to them and that really gave them a different way of moving forward and permission to move forward and to experience joy again.
It's very interesting. And the one thing my wife wrote down too here, I told you I have notes. She says, I loved how she would always scrub the kitchen sink with Ajax from the beginning to the end of the book. Simple, yet important. That's what she's like, please tell Lynda this. Please tell her. I just love that all the way through. I don't know if that's a spoiler for anyone, but definitely check it out when you're reading the book. You'll catch on to what my wife's saying there. Can you expand on that a little bit, Lynda, for Jen?
Well, sure. As I said at the beginning, I really feel that those first 13 years gave me so many important messages and lessons about how to live your life in a meaningful way, based on the way my mother lived her life and the values that we had as a family. But one of the things that we always did every night after dinner was my sisters and I would clean up the kitchen, and my mother always wanted us to clean the sink with Ajax. We did it as a family, but I particularly liked shining up the sink with Ajax. And when you lose someone, you want memories of them. You want to carry on some of the things that they did as a way of remembering them. And because in the 70s, the way people dealt with loss was to never talk about who died. It was quite different than it is right now. We now know how important it is to keep those memories alive and to talk about the person who died or the people who died. That didn't happen then. So I had to have my own little ways of remembering my mother. And I would never go to bed at night, no matter what was going on, until I was able to use some Ajax and shine up that sink, because then I felt like my mother was close by and that she would be proud of me and that she knew that the things she taught me, that I was following in her footsteps.
As you think back on the book, it's been out for a while. It's great response from readers. As you look at this, are there moments where you just feel like your mom and your sisters are close? Like it's just like they're there with you, and it's like it's normal. It's not even weird. It's like, oh yeah, they're here with me all the time. Does that still happen?
It does still happen, yes. And as you know, because you read the book, I did put the transcripts in from visits with the medium, which was so life-changing.
Right.
Because I always believed that life goes on and that I was getting signs from them that they were around, but I was really afraid to talk about it because I thought people would think I was really delusional.
Right.
But when I went to the medium and she told both me and my husband, Barry, things that she was getting from them, we were absolutely blown away. We could not believe it. And I have the transcripts and I still have the tapes to prove that none of this was made up. That the things she told us, no one else in a million years could have ever even known about. So, yes, I believe they have been around always and they continue to be around. And if you're open to getting those signs and messages from people on the other side, it's very comforting to feel like life does go on. And we're more and more nowadays, people are more and more open to that belief, which I'm so grateful for.
I lost my dad to cancer many, many years ago, and we were really close. And I pulled into a parking lot about a few months ago, and I was trying to find the perfect spot, and I had to go to where the parking meter was, and I went to one spot, and it was too far, so I kept driving, and it was an empty parking lot. You could park anywhere. And I kind of did some loops. I stopped at a couple spots, and I finally settled in a spot. I don't know why I was being indecisive that day, but I finally settled. I opened the door, and there's a dime on the ground right where I would step, and I'm like, come on. Like, of all of the places where I could have parked, and I did park and then moved on, I ended up right there, and it's the only one I saw that day, right? And I'm just like, okay, is that random? Is that somebody trying to talk to me? But because I was thinking of him that day, right? And it's just like, okay, well, even if you're like, Dave, that's absurd, to me it meant something, right? It was somebody thinking of me in that moment, right? So that's what I hold out hope for, right? So, and I got that through reading the book too.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I've had too many examples to ever question those messages and signs. And I love finding dimes and finding them, as you say, like you happen to pick this unbelievably random spot and there was your dime. No question.
Ridiculous. I'm like, how does this happen? So, yeah. I wish I was finding like $100 bills. That would be even better, but then a dime. But no, it's just that moment. You're just like, how unaware we are of our surroundings and what's happening and messages that might be coming to us from however they come to us. I don't know. I haven't figured this all out, but I think just having our radar up and just understanding that no matter how we lose our loved ones, there's still that bond somehow, right?
Yeah, I truly believe that.
Yeah. For the book then, Lynda, I wanna just leave off with this because I want people to come buy this book. I really want everyone. I want you to go buy this book. It's really, really good. Let's wrap up, Lynda, with kind of your closing thoughts for a reader around the book. I don't know where to end off because I feel like this is a conversation we need to keep going with, but I want to honor your time as well. Where do you think we need to go for the reader on this? Is there anything we haven't touched on that you think is pivotal for the reader when they read their copy of this book?
Well, I also want people to really understand that just because we talked so much about those very early years and how devastating it was for me, the book is not a depressing book.
No.
And a lot of people are afraid to read it. They go, oh, I can't read a book about a plane crash because I'll never be able to get on a plane again. Really, the book is not about the plane crash. The book is about a tragic loss, the devastation to a family, and the choices that I made, my father made, and, everyone in my family made about moving forward. And my husband's story. It's really a story about when we're faced with any kind of loss, whether it's expected or unexpected, how do you move forward? How do you carry on with your life? It's the biggest question people ask when they're faced with that loss and they feel like they are just in this really dark place. Will I ever be able to feel happy again? And should I feel happy again? And is it right for me to want to feel happy again because this person is gone now? And how can I be so selfish that I even want to feel happy again? And my message is, absolutely, you should feel happy again. I'm so grateful that I chose to feel happy again. I'm so sad to think about the way my father continued existing and never truly living again. And that maybe with the correct help and some different choices, he could have had some joy again in his life. And joy and grief can live at the exact same time. They can coexist. And, I really hope that people are not reluctant to pick up the book because they're worried that it's going to be depressing. I mean,
no.
the feedback for all these years has been, I couldn't put this book down. I was wanting more. This book needs to be made into a movie. This book needs to be made into a series. I've heard that over and over again.
And there's people listening to this right now, and you need to talk to Lynda because we've had some pretty amazing people on the show and connected to the show that could really run with this. So I'm just putting it out there in the world. We have people listening around the world. You never know who's going to listen and press play, and they need a copy of Repairing Rainbows. And this has to happen, Lynda. This has to happen. Talk a little bit about where we can connect with you as well, Lynda, for the readers and followers to stay in your world and follow your next chapter. Where do you want to send everybody?
Well, I have a website, repairingrainbows.com. And I love getting emails, and especially I love getting feedback from people after they've read the book. And the book's been out since 2010. And to this day, I continue to get the most amazing feedback.
Wow.
So I know that it's still circulating and making a difference. And for me, then it was all worth the pain and tears that I spent writing it, because I'm helping people. And for me, that is number one important.
Spectacular. It's an easy read, everybody. It's captivating. I know watching my wife, Jen, I had to really fight to get her attention. Like, hey, I'm over here. She's like, I'm reading this book. I got to read this. I can't put it down. So there's so much in here for you. There's a lot of hope in this book. There's a lot of life in this book. So yeah, as Lynda was saying, it's when you first think about the book, it's not what you think. There's a lot of great stuff in here that's really going to help you. And it's a great story, Lynda. It's sad that we have to have the story to have the book, but I think the book really helps for anyone that reads it and shares it. So as you're listening to this, if you know anybody that has suffered any type of loss in their life, they need a copy of this as well. So don't just buy one, buy two, one for you and one for them. Just send it to them. Don't even give them the option. Just send it to them. So you have to read this book. And you're right, Lynda. I think this lives on your nightstand near your bed. It's a great companion, this book. So thank you for writing this.
Thank you. I'm hoping that a publisher picks it up soon, because I'm down to my last box, literally.
Really?
Yep. So before I order the fourth printing, I've been pitching it and waiting to hear back from some publishers, because I think the feedback I've received has been so incredibly positive just from the 10,000 copies that are out there, that I believe this needs to be in the hands of a larger publisher with the ability to really get it out there more globally. And, anyway, I'm very patient and I'm positive, and I have a feeling that will happen.
I know they're listening, so it'll happen. Lynda, I know it has to happen. The story has to get out in front of more people.
Yeah.
But successful already, though. Like, that's amazing to know that many people have been touched by this book already. Plus, in addition to what you know, there's more people that know about this than we even know, right? So congratulations on an amazing book, Lynda. It's very touching and very capturing. I don't even know the words. It's an amazing read. So thank you so much for writing this for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me on this podcast.
I love having you here. Everybody, go grab a copy of Repairing Rainbows. Get them while you can. Like, hurry up. And then share it as well. Share the episode. Share Lynda's website. Buy that extra copy. You're going to come across somebody who's going to need this. And it's a great read. I'm going to have to give it back to Jen, my wife, because you're going to want to read it again. But I'm pretty sure this book is not going to sit on the shelf behind me, Lynda. It's going to get worn out. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Dave.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.